Hey everyone, it's Justine. Welcome to a new video. After seeing so many comments on one of my previous videos, I decided that it's time to do a layering stamps hacks. So how to line them up, how to get good results with your layering stamps, because I know it's something so many struggle with. So I've kind of checked out videos from around the internet, and I'm hoping I'm pulling in a whole bunch of ideas just into one general place where you can access all the information you need. Now, some of these might be new to you, some of them might not be, and I hope that everyone has a chance to learn something new about layering stamps. So put on your comfiest sweater. For me, it's my Ravenclaw Harry Potter sweater, and your crafty clothes, and let's get started. All right, so the first tip for layering stamps is using some sort of stamping tool, whether it be the Misti, Mini Misti, stamp platform, whatever it is that you have. Having a stamp platform is going to make things so much easier versus using an acrylic block. You'll get a lot more accuracy, and when it comes to making multiple stamped images, this is definitely the best option. So this is your first thing in improving your layering stamp experience. Consult the layering guide. Most of the time, companies who come up with layering stamps, especially the companies that come out with them often and are known for them, like Altenew, include layering guides. Layering guides are really amazing. They have, in Altenew's, lots of different examples and color combinations. They have color combination listed in their ink colors, so you can just give those a quick copy. And then not only that, but they also have their layering guide. This is at 60%, so it's not a true size, but it shows you here the areas that should be actually lining up. So when you're going to go line up this stamp, for example, start at the bottom. You can see that that's kind of the common ground on all three of these stamps. They're really gonna line up best on the bottom, and then you can worry about the top as you're finicking around here with the stamps. Now, for me personally, I never create layering stamps just once. I always create multiples so that I never have to really pull them out too often, and that makes things a lot easier, and it's a lot more effective use of my time. The second thing I recommend, if this is the first time you're ever using one of your layering stamps or you're a beginner at layering stamps, use regular copy paper so you don't get frustrated ruining your cardstock if you're having struggles lining things up. All right, so what do I mean about using copy paper to get the best experience? So what I'm going to do right now is your first layer is generally the easiest. You can place it wherever you like. And I'm going to be doing the largest Snapdragon stamp. So this is the first layer. This brings me to my next tip on layering stamps. Use inks that are meant for layering. Altenew and scrapbook.com actually have inks that are labeled. So Altenew sells theirs in 4-packs, and all 4 of those colors generally coordinate to make things for layering stamps. Scrapbook.com has taken it a step further to call their stamps things like red, or their inks, red 1, red 2, red 3, red 4. Those are really great for beginners, especially if you're unsure which colors to use. Makes things so much easier. But really, coloring coordination is really not that difficult. Just grab a light, a medium, and a dark shade and see what it looks like. Okay, so I have my regular cardstock here on top because this is my first layer. I've inked up using Hot Tub ink from Catherine Pooler, and I'm stamping it down. I'm now going to remove my cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and now stamp this on my copy paper. To be on the safe side, I'm actually going to stamp it on both sides in case I make a mistake. And remember, you can actually do this as many times on the copy paper as you want, so it'll allow you a lot of room for mistakes. I'm going to grab my second layer, and according to the layering guide that we looked at earlier, it's going to line up best on the bottom, and I can see that here lining up best. Now, another best practice is to get a bird's eye view. Really get up over your stamp. You won't see me doing that in videos because then I get my big head in the way. But if you go directly over top, so you're looking from directly face down, it's going to be a lot easier to line up than doing it from the side or sitting directly behind your stat platform. So now remember, this is copy paper. So if right now I find that, it's not layered up quite well, then I can go ahead, flip it around and try and line it up again. So for example, I'm going to see on the copy paper if this is lined up properly. Okay, so I can see that this is lined up pretty much perfectly. I might want to get a little over to the edge a little bit more, but overall I'm pretty satisfied. But I wanted to show you what happens when it's not lined up perfectly. Okay, so once I have my bird's eye view and I'm lining up my stamp, I'm going to kind of do it on purpose so that it's not layered up properly. It's going to be slightly off. So then I can show you why the copy paper is so great. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this. And you can see here, I'm way off. That doesn't work. So now I've saved my cardstock sheet and I'm able to flip my paper around. I have my other print on the other side and I'm able to try and line it up again. And you can do this as many times as you like, just as long, of course, that your layering stamp, you've done this multiple times on copy paper. Once you have it lined up perfectly on the copy paper, you just replace your copy paper with your cardstock. Don't remove your stamp because it's in the exact place you need it to be right now. All right, so now that I see that I've lined this up pretty much perfectly here and I'm satisfied with it, I can remove the copy paper, place my regular cardstock in there, and I'm able to give it then a stamp over top and it's perfectly done. Now this time here, when I'm doing my next layer, I'm going to grab the side, obviously that's perfectly lined up, not the side where I made mistakes on, which is why I said it might be a good idea, especially if you're in the beginning, to make multiple copies of this copy paper, just to be on the safe side. All right, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna try and get that bird's eye view. It said it's gonna line up best at the bottom. Another thing that you can do is you can stamp things at the multiples at the same time. So for example, this one and this one, this is kind of the stem of the flower itself. You can stamp those again at the exact same time if you like. So my crafty question of the day is, where do you like to craft? Do you have a craft room, a craft corner, a craft dining room table? Do you like to craft in public, at cafes? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to see it. My craft room is in a corner of the hallway, kind of the end of the hallway. And so this is where I craft. I don't have a craft room, I never have. It's always been either a part of my bedroom or a part of the living room or the hallway, depending where I'm living at the time. But I love my craft space. I'm so happy to be able to have my own little desk here and organizer. Another thing that you can do, actually, if you don't have many ink colors, for example, this is a nice crafty hack for you. You can use these without having multiple shades of the ink. Let's say I have a three flowered ink. So I'm going to be using all that jazz from Catherine Pooler to ink this up. Okay, once I think I have my flower all inked up here, I'm going to push down. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab my second layer here, line it up nicely. I always find the bigger the stamp, the easier it is to line up too. I don't know if that's just me, but... And then I can go ahead with the same ink pad again. And it's automatically going to make that layer underneath darker. It's going to be more subtle than using, for example, 3 or 4 different ink pads, but it still does the trick. I can even go ahead and give this another stamp if I want to make it even darker. So you can see here, I'm using the same ink pad to get the layered look. Now keep in mind, you may want to let this dry slightly longer than you would regularly because the ink is all sitting on top of each other. This might be easier for some people as well. You don't need to follow the whole first layer, second layer, third layer. You can do them reversed if you like. If you find that you're one of those people when you create layering stamps that all of a sudden the layers are outside of your original area, this might be the perfect thing for you. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my darkest ink color here to link up the last layer, and I'm gonna stamp that down. This is a beautiful color, Suede Shoes by Catherine Pooler. And I'm gonna grab my second stamp here, and I'm gonna line this up over top as best I can. This is gonna work better with some stamps than others. This one here, I find it works quite well. This way you can really see that you're not going outside the lines at all, if that makes sense. I'm gonna use all that jazz this time. And you can see it really doesn't affect the original colors that were put down when you go from dark to light. And lastly, I'm just going to fidget around here until I find a perfect match for the last layer. So you can see it doesn't take long. As I said, some companies I think are kind of better at producing layering stamps than others in the sense that they're just easier to line up. All right, so there's that done from the reverse side of things, which might be easier for some. Now, when it comes to stamping layering stamps, I tend to always stamp in bulk. Oftentimes I'll stamp in bulk in one color and then continue in another color as well, just so that I have a whole bunch ready in the back of my stamp packet for when I need to use the stamp, and I don't need to keep pulling them out and lining them up and everything. One of my favorite stamp series of layering stamps that I like to buy are the Altenew Build-A-Flower stamps. And the reason why I love these stamps so much is because obviously they're great layers, they look really realistic, but then also the coordinating dies are really minimal. So it might come with just the one flower or the two flowers. And so I find the price point really affordable. And by buying the coordinating dies with these Build-A-Flower stamps or with any layering stamps, you're opening yourself up to being able to stamp in bulk a lot more easily. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is only good if you're planning on creating a lot of the same stamp, I guess you could say. Now, you're going to go ahead and you're going to stamp your first layer. And you're going to stamp it 4 times. At this point, you're going to get an idea, you know, how big your cardstock actually needs to be. I always cut it to 6 by 6, and generally it works for most of them. So this is almost like a template. I mean, I'm going to be able to use it after. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to remove this stamp here, but I'm going to grab its second layer. So I'm going to grab its second layer. I'm now going to line it up on position 2. I guess you could call this 1, 2, 3, 4 if you want. And you're going to be able to pick it up and see if that one works well. So then again, I'm going to do this on all 4 areas. And remember, this is your template. So this is going to go a lot quicker after 4 flowers. So once you do this, you're going to cut yourself a couple of papers that are, you know, 6 by 6 and you're ready to go. Also, this is really great if you want to do multiple colors. You can switch up the colors later if you want. Just clean off the stamps. Okay, so that's done. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my third layer, for example, and I'm going to go ahead and line that up, but I'm going to line that up this time on position 3. Now for me, it's just kind of easier to get up in here and really see where this goes. Okay, this looks decent, and then I'm going to return it back to the position 3, and I'm going to pick it up. And for this one, there's also multiple layers for the centers, but just for time purposes and time's sake, I'm just going to do it here. So this specific technique is really great for stamps with 4 layers or less. Okay, so now that I'm finished my original template, all my hard work is now done and I'm able to stamp easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all of my ink pads sitting open. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go into position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4. I'm going to stamp them all down at the same time. I'm going to then rotate my cardstock and I'm going to do the same thing. Position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4. Now you can also have a template, a piece of copy paper underneath that says 1, 2, 3, 4 if you feel like you're going to get confused. That works as well. Then I'm going to turn this around once again. And then I can go ahead and I can replace the 6x6 paper as many times as I need. And then I'm able to just go ahead and die cut them. And I always keep my inks in the same order so I don't get confused. But always just keeping things lined up in the corner there is going to be your saving grace. So there we go. So you can see the difference between having all that jazz and having the suede blue. This is a little bit more popped out and this one's more subtle. But overall, this is how you can create multiple stamps, and this is what I like to do personally a lot of the times when I'm doing bulk stamping. My next technique is also for doing the bulk stamping. So for this one here, and I've shown this on my channel before, I'm going to be using smaller layering stamps. Now I wanted to mention that if you cut your cardstock 6x6, as long as your stamps do not cross the 3-inch line on either side, you can actually do multiple stamps at the same time. So if you have something that you're coloring the same way and you're using the same colors with, hey, why not? So I'm going to actually do 2 of these at the same time. Again, it's not crossing the 3-inch square that I have here, so it's going to work just fine. Okay, so I'm going to take my lightest color first. And then I'm just going to rotate my cardstock. It's very similar to the technique I just showed. But for me, it does go quicker than grabbing 4 inks at the same time. I don't know, I think this one's quicker in my opinion. And then once again, if I'm going to do more than 4, I'm going to replace this cardstock at this point here. And then I'm going to stamp the first layer and first layer and first layer as many times as I need flowers. Then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the stamps off of my stamp positioner or my Misti tool, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the next layer. So again, you want to stamp at this point as many flowers as you need. This layering stamp works a little bit differently in that it layers kind of inside of each other, if that makes sense. Okay, going on to my second layer, which is orange peel. This is one of my new colors. Once again, making sure every time it's in the corner. Okay, so I was just looking at the layering guide. I was having a hard time lining this one up. I was a bit confused. It's really important to always check your layering guide, because if you look at this one, it doesn't go the largest stamp to the smallest. It actually goes smallest, largest, medium. So just keep that in mind. If you have a hard time lining up, that might be why. It goes in a different order than what you originally thought. Who knew? Okay, so this one here, I've cut my cardstock to 8.5 by 6. I could have cut 6.5. This technique is how many layers you can do with this template depends on how many times you can fit this die going down. So for this one, I could, if this had 4 layers to it, I could do 4 layers because I could die cut it that many times. So what I'm going to do is I'm placing 2 different flowers on here so I can get the most out of it. And I'm placing it down on my paper. I'm going to die cut this as many times as there are layers. So if I look at this specific stamp set here, there are 3 layers. And so I'm going to die cut these 1, 2, and 3 times on my template. All right, so again, like the first one, there's a little bit of a setup process involved in this. Now, the way that I saw this done is that there was tape placed across the side. So again, thank you to Jennifer McGuire for showing this technique. And she said, I believe in her video, she saw this somewhere else as well. And so many people are just so creative in coming up with all sorts of things. And so what you're going to do is you're going to actually place, again, there's some prep involved in this one. So you're going to place in your first die cuts, and then you're going to place in the first stamps. And again, if you're unhappy with one of these, for example, you can go in and redo it. So I'm going to go ahead with my lightest color now. and stamp these, and I can see, am I happy with it? Do I need to adjust anything? Then you're gonna go into your second one, move them down, and add your second layer. Pick these up, go in with your second layer, make sure everything's lined up. Now you can go ahead and add in your third layer. Okay, so now I have my third layer. So I can remove these now. So now again, I'm all finished all the prep. I've removed my layers, and now exactly like one of the previous techniques, remember the color doesn't really get affected when you stamp in out of order. And so I can go ahead now and I can place in all my stamps. And I can arrange all my ink pads to be here on the side, lids off, and I can go in now and I can stamp all of these at one time. And then what I can do is I can lift them up, and now I can just rotate them. So I can bring this one down here and here, and then I can go ahead and continue my stamping. Now this is definitely a technique that I recommend if you're someone who puts on workshops. This is gonna make things a lot easier for your guests to do, and it just makes things very, very clear. So if you're doing like bulk stamping with people who don't know really what they're doing, this is definitely a technique that I would do. Okay, so that's the end of that. So that is another way that you can get bulk stamping done easily without having to think too much of lining them up once you have the original lining up done. All right, thanks everyone so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed the crafty hacks on how to layer your layering stamps. And I hope they allow you to get the most out of your layering stamps, maybe dust them off and get some use out of them. Thanks so much for watching everyone, and have an amazing day. Bye.